I have a lawyer, lecturer, Opokwa Jemang, in the studio with me. Lecturer, School of Law. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yes. I don't want to say lawyer. I want to say lecturer. Because I would want you to teach us.
Thank you.
When we say perjury, you know that immediately somebody will tell you in literature, in Macbeth, when Junior Macduff asked the mother, "Mom, who is a traitor?" They said, "Daddy is a traitor." Who is a traitor? He said, "The one who but swears and lies." So it's effective that when you swear and you know that what you have sworn to say is the truth, and then you lie, then they say perjury. Is perjury a serious offense?
Well, it's a very serious offense. It comes under offenses against the administration of justice. For anybody appearing in any court proceeding, you are going to swear an oath, which or even if you have to take certain positions, you have to swear an oath. And for those who are interested, well, we have the oath decree of which is NRC Decree 6, which contains almost all the oath that we swear in court. Then if you take the Constitution, go to the shadows, you will see the presidential oath, the vice presidential oath, the ministerial oath, etc. And so in all positions, you have to swear an oath. And the oath is something, in this day and age, maybe we will not understand it, but it is a religious cum liga, in that a person who swears an oath knows that failure to abide by what the person has sworn brings some repercussions, like in this life and life beyond. That is how, our law is a Judeo-Christian, and therefore it takes certain things from these principles. And the same, so we have this oath, first one, and we have affirmation. Whoever goes to court will either swear an oath to tell nothing but the truth or affirm. The difference between affirmation and oath is just that for oath you must swear in the name of a supreme being, a God. You swear in the name of God to speak the truth and nothing but the truth. So you will mention the supreme being. Either you are going by your rosary or your Bible or your Quran. You swear to in the presence of God. So that is it, that you are going to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. And in those days where these things came about, the Shakespearean and the Queen Elizabethan time, or in our case even the Antoniama and the Apontian times, where people have that regard and respect, when they know that you will suffer the consequence, not only on this earth, but even life beyond. People were bent to speak the truth. So that's the essence of the oath. And then affirmation. These days, you don't believe in the existence of God. You are entitled to do so by law. You can say, well, I'm not going to swear by any God, but I'm going to swear by something that works on my conscience. There's certain things that work on my conscience. And the Constitution allows religious freedom and then a practice of culture. And therefore, you can say, I will not swear by any God, but I will affirm that whatever I say is the truth. The bottom line is, whether it's an oath or affirmation, you promise to speak nothing but the truth. If therefore, in so doing, you knowingly, or behave in a manner that you should know or ought to know that what you are saying is not the truth.
You should know or ought to know.
Of course.
That what you are saying is not the truth.
Yeah, you see, because sometimes that's subjective. You may say you don't know.
Yes.
Now
who determines? If I say I don't know.
But reasonable expectation of certain people with common sense, there are certain things you ought to know. You ought to know. That's why we say you know or you ought to know. Because there are certain things you can't say you don't know. You ought to know. Yes, you ought to know. In your normal behavior, there are certain things you ought to know. And therefore, you can't say when you were telling them that you come at 8 and you came at 9. You can't say you didn't know. I didn't know that. You see, you didn't know that 8:30 is later than 8. Don't you know? You ought to know that 8:30. When the time was 8 and you came 8:30, you ought to know that there are 30 minutes, which means you came after. Yes, This one you ought to know. You can't say you don't know that 30 minutes after 8 is not late.
Right. But then if you look at now, so I ought to know, or I should know, and then I have sworn that I will speak the truth. What about if it's a slip?
A slip?
Yes. And there is a mistake. Can I genuinely, after saying the thing, can I genuinely say that I'm sorry, I have gone wrong?
Of course, you can retract. But let me also tell you that there's a thin line between a lie and a genuine mistake.
Genuine mistake.
Because have you ever met a person arrested entering somebody's and saying that, or a person who is drunk saying that I'm not drunk? Have you ever? I'm drunk. Have you ever? They're always saying yes. So there's a thin line. You see, but of course, our system has a way of determining genuine mistake, because as normal human beings we make error. That's why there's an error of judgment, and then where a person is deliberate. Sometimes, yes, as normal human beings, and the system can correct that. So, of course, if you are filing a document, and then you know that whoever commits perjury, and the definition is there, you know what you are, it's a slip, as you are saying, something has slipped into it. When it comes into your notice, what do?
Quickly have to correct.
You correct. If you don't correct and you allow it to go on, that's where you say you ought to know that you are lying. You see, so sometimes you identify your mistakes, you correct them, because you are not angels and we are not perfect. Mistakes are bound to happen. But if you don't correct it, then we will say that it was a deliberate intent. But if you attempt to correct it, then there's no problem. But how you do it, you don't wait and take advantage of it and then later say I'm correcting it.
Right.
See,
lecturer, now let's look at this. Is it only perjury when you do this before a court of law?
In fact, you see, if you look at the section, yes, maybe you see a person is guilty of perjury if in any written or verbal statement made or verified by him, so written and oral. Yes. Made or verified by him. So sometimes you are the author of the statement, which you are lying. So oral or written, both are statements. Or you verify it on behalf of somebody. You know that this thing is not true. Somebody, and then you sign for. We have been doing it. Yeah. Sign for. You don't even know the content. Then you sign for. You verify it. Verification means that you say it is true. Verified by him upon oath before any court or public officer.
So a public officer here.
Court, public officer. So mostly I tell my students when they make your slip, yes, I tell them that you are committing perjury because I'm a public officer.
Yes.
And so whatever they are saying, if it's not true, they are perjuring themselves. Or before the president. So if you are being given an appointment, you know that there are problems with your CV. You have submitted them. You are committing perjury before the president. You see, and the appointment committee, all that. You see, so it's a public officer, the president, and if the president, then all people working for the president, working for and on behalf of the president. If you go in there, or any committee, so public accounts committee, appointments committee, if you go in there, you see that thereof, he states anything which he knows to be false in a material particular, or which he has not reason to believe to be true. That is where you ought to know. Sometimes you have no reason to believe to be true, but you are testing the waters. If you test the waters and it turns out to be false, that is your problem. Because sometimes knowingly we go on peddling falsehood. That one is known. But sometimes we know, or sometimes we don't pay heed to it, hoping that we will not be caught. Hoping that we will not be caught. If that happens, so if you are putting in that you hold this degree, which you know that you are expecting it, but you have not fulfilled all the obligations, but you have put it there, hoping that by the time maybe you appear, the degree might have come. It did not come. What do? You withdraw it. If it goes, then you have no reason to believe that it is true, that you have a BA. So all these things amount to perjury. So not only before a court, that's why it's administration justice. Our justice system relies on truth. That's why you must swear an oath, which is a sanctity. It's a sanctimonious thing. In fact, in the olden days, it was based on a seal, red seal, where you can see like blood. When you say oath, it's a blood thing. But these days, you and I know that if you swear an oath, it's a lie. Well, after all, the law says you should swear, so I'll swear. You see, the law says I should swear, so I swear. And sometimes you say, well, if I want, you can even swear by anything, because and our people in the villages think that even they don't have that trust in the Bible. They say, well, if it is the truth, I will swear by Antoine. That one is quicker. And my favorite quote is from the former president, who said, John Rawlings, yes, at National Reconciliation, to show that he was very serious about it. He said he will swear by all the three. I mean, he swear by the Quran, he will swear by the Rosary, he will swear by the Bible. To show that, you see, but whatever it is, even if you are not swearing by these symbols and objects, sometimes what works on your conscience, that is what is important. So there's a person who will not take these objects, but affirm that you. Right. That is more important. So it's not a symbol. It's not a symbol, but you have to. You have to. Honest.
Now, what is the punishment for it? If I had to commit perjury, is it what is the punishment? Can I just be brought before the court and warned not to do this again? Go and sin no more, or
it depends. You see, perjury itself will accompany something. Sometimes you are charged with this or something, but it's a misdemeanor. It is not a first-degree felony or second-degree felony, but it's not for warning. And depending on where you are, for example, if you are an MP, if you're an MP and you perjure yourself, you lose your seat. Yes, you lose your seat. If you're a president and you perjure yourself, you lose your seat. So the punishment depends on the activity involved. So, is
it difficult to establish perjury against somebody? No, is it difficult?
I think it's one of the easy ones to prove, because sometimes if you have written something which is false and you have verified that it is true, it comes out and they show it to you. Sometimes after they've shown the thing to you, you realize that you are caught. You are caught because you've put in something which you are not supposed to do. You have verified something if you are not supposed to do. Immediately that happens, that is where you start giving excuses. Oh, I didn't know that. But that's where the law says you ought to have known. You see, so it is not very difficult. But saying it is not difficult does not mean that when you go to court, mathematically they start and they finish, because definitely you defend yourself.
That's right.
Even because, as you said, a slip. It means you are defending yourself. Yes. The slip means you are defending yourself. You accept it. You accept it on face value that, but there's people who immediately admit.
And so, if you go to court and I am pulled before the court for perjury and I immediately admit, would it affect the way I will be sentenced?
Well, such admission and not delaying time. You see, the judge is also a human being like you. If you are taking the court for a ride, something that should have admitted, you want us to go on for 6 months before you are convicted. That one, your sentence will be enhanced. But sometimes we plead for mitigation because I'm a first offender. This was a genuine mistake or whatever there is, and the court is satisfied. Well, you'll be convicted, but maybe because you did not take the court into a jolly ride and you admitted your offense, you look at you have been a first offender, you are not a persistent liar, consistent lying, you have not been convicted before. All these things will be taken into either to enhance your sentence or mitigate your sentence. So sometimes it's good that when you realize that you are caught, you plead. Rather than fight on, because you may fight on, and then in fighting on, you may get the maximum. Because you see,
the maximum. When you say maximum, it's about
maximum. As I said, it depends.
Yes.
Maximum sentences. Sometimes for this type of felonies, you may have a day to 6 months. Sometimes you may have a year to 5 years. Sometimes you have 5 years to 10 years. So it is between, and in between, the judge can give you the 10. If it is 5 to 10, the judge can give you 10 or give you 5. See, so all our penalty units are stated in our law. So when you go in there, they will look at it and then look at the penalty you need. The judge can look at it. He can't give you below the minimum, neither can he give you above the maximum. But in between,
he can give it to you.
Yes.
Now we are looking at a situation where, for example, like the case NPP versus Electoral Commission and the President, and then you hear we are going to assemble about 2,800 witnesses. How can you determine if one who have done is telling a lie? Perjury, 2,000. How can you? When it gets to this situation, can perjury be found in here? Plenty of them, 2,000 plus.
Well, that the number alone does not mean a person is going to tell a lie.
Yeah.
There may be one liar, and there may be 1 million credible persons, of course. But the law doesn't want even one. We want 0. The mere fact that you are calling more witnesses does not mean they are coming to tell a lie. The danger, however, is the contradictions and inconsistencies that may come in their stories. In their stories. Well, I always recall the case of the Republic versus those who were said to have the Yendi people. They were acquitted and discharged. People did not read. If you read it, you see about 17 witnesses. And sometimes when you listen to, they are giving you account of the same incident. But each and every one, see, we normally say witnesses are editors. They edit the story and enhance where they think they have to enhance. Sometimes in enhancing that aspect, they lie unwittingly. Yes. You see, because it happens. Any human being, when you are confronted, because of your upbringing and where you are coming from, there are certain things you will ignore. But there are certain things the other person will enhance. In doing so, sometimes the stories are conflicting.
That's right.
That alone may not be a lie. After all, when you read your Bible, the same story, Luke will write it differently from Matthew. It doesn't mean the two of them are lying. Maybe it's the way they see things.
Yes.
So that's how it is. So the danger in assembling multitudes of people, not only for one case, but in all our life situations, that if you don't take care, there will be contradictions.
And inconsistencies.
And in law, credibility of a case mostly depend on consistencies. One way of saying that you are not credible is where the same mouth speak double speak.
That's right. That is brilliant. But you see, I think time is far against us. But the question I would have loved to get before is about, for example, if a president, for example, in his campaign tells you that I will give you this. When he comes in and he is not giving it to you, can you take the president to court for perjury?
Well, I will answer by reading this. A person is guilty of perjury if any written or verbal statement made or verified by him upon oath. The first is, so the campaign statement, was it under oath?
No, he didn't swear.
So it's a political talk.
It's a political talk.
Yes.
Thank you, lawyer Opoku-Agyeman. So now those of you are thinking that, well, he lied. Why can you? So it's perjury. It is not perjury. It's a campaign talk. So if we would want to make sure that we give strength to it, then you have to tell the politicians, anytime you mount the platform, swear by oath. So you take the Bible and swear. When you swear, and then, but you cannot consider the president that when he was talking, there were other public officers there. So when he said before the public officer, it's also under oath.
You see, oath. You must swear by oath or affirm.
That's right.
Yes, and we have procedure of swearing an oath or affirmation. Sometimes you have been making promises. You yourself, you've been making promises to people.
Which I feel. Sometimes I feel.
But you see, it does not mean that you can go along and be doing this. It's the integrity and credibility of that person. And in America, for example, they term it a political question. Such a person making such promises, knowing very well that is not able to fulfill, lacks credibility, and that is punished through the electoral process rather than
by that. So, well, thank you, Lawyer Opoku-Agyeman. It's a pleasure having you on Sunrise. We looked at perjury and we have seen perjury, and therefore it is very important that when you walk into any court of law or before any public officer and you know you are either under affirmation or under oath, know that you ought to know, or you should know, that what you are speaking is not the truth, and therefore you stand the chance of being imprisoned.